Hey everybody, welcome back to One Seed, One World. So today I wanted to show you some wintertime indoor growing experiments that I am working on. Now I normally will grow some kind of things in the winter, but normally it's starting later in the winter where I'm starting to get, some of my plants ready for spring, where I'll start some stuff inside. Normally more like February, March at the very earliest, because my last frost date here to put things outside for a lot of the stuff isn't until around Mother's Day in May. But I wanted to try to grow some stuff inside this winter for solely harvesting inside in artificial light and never even really transplanting outside for the most part. The first is tomatoes. So I got a couple of Dr. Weechi yellow tomatoes coming up here, and then I've got some cilantro. I got a basil plant that's just getting started here, and I put in some peppers as well, but those haven't sprouted yet, and it might be a little too cool down here in the basement. Normally at night it's about 63 degrees down here, and then with the lights off, and then when the lights are on in my little mini greenhouses, it gets up to about 73, maybe 75 when I've only got a few lights going on, and that might be a little too cool for the peppers. But my main experiment, and I wanted to share a few things with you here, things that I've learned already and some mistakes that I made, so that if you decide to do this, then you can learn from my mistakes and things that I've learned along the way. So I've done peppers and tomatoes and stuff before, so that's no huge experiment other than the fact that I will not probably be moving them outside. The main thing are these here. These are potatoes. These are potatoes grown from seed, not seed potatoes. This was actually true potato seed that I harvested the seeds from the potato berries back in the fall. And I will post a link, because I did a video on the harvesting and kind of all about harvesting potato seeds and saving them for later. And so I'll post a link for that video down below, but now this is the next step in the process that I wanted to show you. And let's talk a little bit about planting potatoes. So now generally when you think about growing potatoes, you think about planting them from seed potatoes, which is where you're actually just planting the tuber, right? And maybe you will plant the whole potato just like this in the ground, or in a lot of cases you will cut this potato up and have a couple of eyes per potato, where that you will plant in the ground, and then you can get your crop from there, and you'll get your sprouts out of the eye of the potato. But you can also plant potatoes from actual potato seeds that you get from the potato berries. Now, a couple things about that. When I first looked something up about this last summer, I thought I read somewhere that you planted them like really super early, like you had to get the seeds started in like December or something. I don't know if I misread something or if I was reading it from maybe an article that was written by someone who's way farther south that would start their crop earlier. But December is a little, actually it's a lot too early for me here in Western Maryland, Zone 6B. I thought that I had read that they could take up to 2 months to even germinate and sprout. Generally, that's not the case. They should probably sprout like a lot of other seeds, normally within the first couple of weeks. Almost all of mine sprouted within 4 days, and I planted these on December 11th, so that's why I've got all these these little sprouts coming up now. So that was mistake number one. I was going to start these because I thought I needed 2 to 3 months to really kind of get them to a place where I could move them outside. That's not the case. But I'm gonna still try to grow them inside. So, step one, if you decide to start your potatoes from true potato seed, from the actual seeds, you want to start them about 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost. So for me, that would probably be about the beginning of March. Number two, when you're planting them from seed versus a potato, When you plant them from a seed potato, when you're actually putting the tuber in the ground, you're going to get a clone of whatever the potato is that you're putting in the ground. So if you're planting a Yukon Gold, if you're planting a russet, if you're planting a red skin potato, you're going to get the same characteristics from that potato. That's not the case when you grow them from seed. Your potatoes that you grow from seed are going to take on various characteristics depending on how the potato flowers were pollinated and what they were pollinated from, which varieties. So they're going to take the characteristics on of the parents, which could be multiple varieties, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing, but you could end up with a new variety of potato. In fact, they will kind of be a new variety of potato because they're going to have their own new characteristics based off of how that whole pollination process ended up. Now this past year, I planted Yukon Gold, russet, and red potatoes that were all kind of growing in bags in a line. They all produce flowers and berries, and I saved berries and from all of them and saved the seeds from all of them. They were all mixed together. So just because I planted potato seeds that I saved, every single one of these could have different characteristics because there was 3 different kinds of potatoes out there that would have had the pollination mixed in. So who knows what I'm gonna get? Maybe I get a mix of like a russet and a Yukon, or a russet and a red, or who knows what. So we'll see what happens. Now, that could be really awesome. You could end up with like some kind of new amazing variety of potato. But you could also end up with the bad characteristics. I'm having problems with that word today. You could end up with some bad characteristics too of whatever the parents were. So you might end up with maybe a not so great potato. The one thing that can come up when you're doing this is that some of the potatoes can be high in glycoalkaloids, which basically gives them a really bitter taste. And so if you end up with a potato that is very bitter, then you're probably high in glycoalkaloids, and you probably won't want to save anything from those in the future. You'd probably want to get rid of those. A couple other cool things about growing potatoes from true potato seed. Number one is their germination rates are great, and they don't lose germination if they're stored properly for years. With a lot of different seeds, the germination rates will kind of drop over the years. Tomatoes normally will last pretty good for 2 to 3 years, but still the rates are going to drop off. But there was a study done back, I think like in 1980, where they tested some true potato seed. I guess I don't know if it started in 1980 or they finished the study in 1980, but they found that the potato seeds they saved still had almost 100% germination rate after 15 years. There was another study that came out in '83 that they had done a similar test where I think they stored their seeds at like 34 to 37 degrees after they had dried them out. And then like at least a 5% or less humidity rate. And those had great germination rates that were good for 27 years. So if you can get yourself some good potato seeds and keep them stored in cool, dark places that are dry, you could have potato seeds that will last you for years and years and years, that will still germinate for many years to come. And you get tons of seed from little berries. I think you get like 100 to 300 seeds per berry, something like that, if I remember correctly. And jump over here, I still have like a whole plate's worth here, so I will have more to plant come March, even if these don't work out. Another great thing about starting your potatoes from seed instead of the tubers is that not seed potatoes, but starting them from seed, that can get a little confusing there, but starting them from seed, they are much more disease resistant. Now, there are some diseases that can transfer from, into the seeds themselves, but overall, as a general rule, potatoes And potato plants that are grown from true potato seed are much more disease resistant than if you were to plant a clone. You know, it's just like, I guess like inbreeding in a way, you know, like with problems with like animals or humans, when there's inbreeding, there's a lot of genetic problems because of like kind of like that cloning. They take, it's not really cloning, but you know, they're a lot more susceptible to diseases and health problems, right? That kind of all the bloodlines too close. But, and the same thing is with potatoes, because if you're planting a tuber, the actual potato itself, and it's cloning from whatever the parents had, it's gonna kind of bring all that disease that the parents had with it. Whereas when you plant them from seed, those seeds are now a more diverse mix that give them a better health benefit. I don't really know the best way to describe this, but they're more disease resistant is what the bottom line is. I'm not doing a very good job at explaining this today, am I? So those were a couple of things that I learned about growing potatoes from seed as I've been doing this, and things that I did not research enough when I first started this, but now I've done a lot more research on it, and now I'm growing them for myself. So I will keep you guys updated on what's gonna kind of come out of this as it goes, both the ones that I'm gonna try to continue to grow indoors versus ones that I will also start in March and then transplant outdoors and see what kind of result and what kind of harvest we can maybe get out of them. One last thing is that when you're growing them from seed, they like temperatures that probably range about 60 to 75-ish degrees. So they like the lower temperatures actually. And they also like a lot of light. And so that's where I might have some issues here, is the limited amount of artificial light I can give them in the basement, but we will see what happens with that. But for temperature wise down here, I'm pretty good. Like I said, I range between 63 and 75 degrees all the time down here. And so that's kind of a perfect temperature for growing them. So if you are growing them inside, try to, you know, if you have a cooler basement or something, you want to try to keep them in a more cooler area that's kind of more like in the mid 60s range is what would be optimal for you to start them inside. So if you have the option of growing them from true potato seed, I recommend trying it. Even if you don't do your whole crop or anything like that way, but if, you know, do some tests and see how it turns out for you. You might come up with a cool new variety of potato, one that's more disease resistant, and ones that you have more kind of control over in getting them started and all that sort of thing. Again, I will post the link down below on my other video about harvesting potato berries, because potato berries don't always show up every single year. I've had plenty of years where I've grown potatoes and did not end up with berries. They kind of like a certain situation, certain weather, certain environment for them to produce berries off the flowers. But you know, if your potato plants are producing the berries, harvest the seeds out of them and try growing them from TPS yourself, true potato seed. So stay tuned, and we will have more updates on what happens with this crazy wintertime potato crop that I am trying here. And if these don't quite make it, I'm going to start more in the spring and we'll get those transplanted outside. But thanks for hanging out again with me today. And I hope whatever's going on in your neck of the woods is going fantastic for you, and that you are having a nice winter, that you're staying warm in all this crazy winter that we've been having. This past Saturday here, it was 3 degrees when I woke up in the morning with a wind chill factor of -16. Did not care for that, but it is warming up again some here. I mean, as winter goes, at least we're not in the single digits anymore. We're getting above freezing, so that's nice. But anyway, I hope you're staying warm, and I hope that we see you again soon. Have a great day. Namaste.